Hello, I'm Laura Robson-Mainwaring and I am the Health Record Specialist in the Modern Domestic team. So what we have here is a file from the Ministry of Health. I'm just going to show you one of the documents that we have inside of it. So what we have here is a document that is dating from the 31st of March 1944, and it is a letter from a doctor's wife named Margaret Boyd, and she is writing to Florence Horsburgh, who is the Parliamentary Secretary to the Ministry of Health. And we can see here that she writes, "I wish to draw your attention to the great concern with which the government's white paper on the proposed National Health Service is being viewed by all sections of the public." And a white paper is a legislative policy document that is put forward by the government to when they want to propose new legislation. So Margaret goes on to say that as a doctor's wife, you will probably think I am prejudiced. I have, of course, personal reasons for not wishing to see my husband in the position of a salaried servant of the state. But I have talked with many people, doctors and the general public, and without exception, they are convinced that the medical service, as laid down in the white paper, is in the interest of neither doctor nor patient. And she goes on to say that as far as the nation's health is concerned, the proposed National Health Service will never do away with the root of evil of bad health. So instead of a National Health Service, she's proposing that the government look into other factors of illness, such as bad housing, overcrowding and lack of sanitation. So Margaret goes on in her letter to say that it makes her burn with indignation to see her own overworked husband and many other doctors spend the precious moments of what should be leisure time fighting a scheme which they know is not in the interest of the country. And then she ends the letter saying the white paper is not only controversial but is an insult to the medical profession, and if implemented will result in the regimentation of doctor and patient alike. So what was this white paper that Margaret is referring to? So if we go back to 1942, so this is still in the period of the Second World War, we see a publication of a report by a civil servant named William Beveridge. And in this report, it's proposed that there's going to be a comprehensive system of social insurance that will help combat poverty and want in the nation. Really, this report is seen as the blueprint for the modern British welfare state. And at the time, there was an opinion poll that was taken out on the British public, and it found that many of the public were really particularly keen on an idea of a universal state-funded health service. Following this report, we then see the publication of a white paper by the coalition government, and this is the white paper that Margaret refers to in her letter. And this white paper really outlines for the first time an idea of a comprehensive national health service. And after this white paper is published, there is quite a lot of opposition from the likes of the British Medical Association, who are a body that represent doctors. And they campaigned against some elements of the proposal, which included the fact that doctors would essentially become employees of the state and have a set salary, so they're moving away from being self-employed and independent. So these letters are in a series called MH77, which is a series that relates to the Ministry of Health and establishment of the National Health Service. And the series contains quite a lot of files about sort of general post-war health policy, but also a lot of the papers are actually letters, and they're from the likes of individuals, from doctors, trade unions and associations, and they're writing into the Ministry of Health to just give their opinion about the new proposed health service. So what I find sort of really interesting about these records is that they can give us an insight into past attitudes to medical care and to state involvement. And these letters also show us some of the real anxieties and concerns that doctors at the time felt about these new health proposals. Some of them were quite opposed to the idea. They sort of outline in quite a lot of detail some of the aspects of the proposals that they're against. But also we have letters from doctors who are just writing in, asking questions about the proposal. They're not necessarily against the idea in its entirety. They just want to know what it means for their particular situation. And we also have letters from doctors who are for the new service. So one of these is a letter from a doctor called Henry Johnston, and he writes from his residence in Wallasey, and he's writing on the 15th of November 1943, and he writes to the Minister of Health, "I am 44 and have been in general practice 22 years, and in my view the conditions imposed by competitive work for financial consideration make it most difficult to do good work." So essentially he's in favour of a salaried service here. And he goes on to say, "If you have the courage, etc., to see this through, you will earn the gratitude of doctors and patients for many years to come." So we really get a range of opinions from these letters, and we really get a sense of the strong feelings that many doctors had towards the new proposals and how widespread the attitudes were, whether that was for or against the service. So really, the next stage of implementation of the NHS came in 1945, where we see the Labour Party come into power, and they bring the National Health Service Bill to Parliament for the first time. So the bill is opposed in its first few readings, and it's still receiving quite a lot of opposition from medical practitioners. So eventually, the state kind of takes on board some of these concerns, and they compromise on some of the proposals. So just for an example, many doctors' surgeries can continue as private enterprises. They can be bought or sold. And also doctors are paid per registered patient. So then in November 1946, we see the passing of the National Health Service Act. And then on the 5th of July 1948, we see the NHS open up its doors to the public for the first time. So there was an immediate popularity around the service. Around 90% of the population had signed up for the service within its first year, and also, probably more significantly for its success, around 85% of doctors also joined the service by the end of the first year. And the NHS really became a source of national pride for the British public from this time.